This story is about me. Today, I am the owner of a construction contracting company. But back when I was still a teenager, I once worked as a laborer. Looking back on that time, my family was poor and I did not have many choices in life. I did not finish school, and if I wanted to farm, the fields were dry. If I wanted to do any other kinds of work, I did not have enough knowledge or skills. Then one day, I met a friend I had not seen in a long time, not since elementary school. That friend invited me to go work with him because one of his relatives happened to be looking for workers. The job was construction work. It paid daily wages, included an allowance, and even provided 3 free meals a day. When I heard that, I agreed and immediately followed my friend. During the first week, I stayed at the worksite. There was one thing that I noticed. Whenever the sun went down, everyone would hurry back to their own lodging. I understood it during that time as people being tired and wanting to sleep to regain their strength. Then, one day, before a major Buddhist holy day and a day off for the workers, the boss asked me to help buy things at the market so they could be used for cooking and making merit to the next day. It was around 5 in the evening after work, so I quickly rode an old bicycle that was parked there and followed the route the boss had told me. He stressed that I had to stay on the road and absolutely not leave the route. I was not allowed to wander anywhere unnecessarily. I had to hurry, buy the things, and come back immediately. On the way back, I had to return by the same road only. The path that I took during that time was a paved road, although it wasn't very smooth. On both sides, there were tall rubber trees stretching from the front of the dormitory all the way to the market. The road curved into a U shape. The distance was about 4 to 5 kilometers, and if I had to use a motorcycle, it probably would not have been that difficult. By the time I reached the market, the sun was already beginning to set, and the air was getting cooler and cooler. I hurried to buy everything that the boss had ordered. The menu they were going to make was boat noodles, and the one thing that was necessary and absolutely could not be missing was fresh pork blood. After I finished buying everything, I quickly rode the bicycle back along the same route. The atmosphere that I had seen earlier had already turned completely dark, and I could barely see anything. The sun had gone down, and there were no streetlights, and all that remained was a silent, lonely atmosphere. On top of that, back then, mobile phones were not yet popular and very expensive. All I could do was get off the bicycle, carry the things, and slowly walk while pushing the bike along. As I was pushing the bicycle, something surprised me. I came across a fork in the road. That was strange because when I had come earlier, this route had not any junctions at all. When I looked onto the side road, I saw that it was a dirt road. It was not very wide on either side. Looking as far as I could, I saw that the end of the road seemed to lead to a mountain, which was the same mountain behind the workers' camp. Even more strangely, the whole road had dim lights along the way. Although they were not very bright, they were enough for me to see the route. With the thoughts I had at that moment, together with the darkness and eerie atmosphere, I felt that if I went straight, I would have to return by the original road, which meant going another 4 to 5 kilometers around the long way. But if I turned into this shortcut, judging roughly by the eye, it should not have been more than 1 kilometer. Happy that I would not have to waste time taking the long way around, I quickly got back on the bicycle and rode into the shortcut immediately. When I thought back to the boss's words telling me to stay on the road and return only by the same way, I did feel a little strange, but I assumed that the boss had probably just been teasing me. Normally, he was kind and liked joking with his coworkers. Not long after that ended, I had only ridden a short distance when, suddenly, The sound of dogs howling miserably rang out from every direction. I began to get goosebumps. At that moment, I heard footsteps that sounded like a four-legged animal running up from behind me, getting closer and closer. I stopped the bicycle and turned around to look behind me. What I saw was the shadow of one dog with glowing red eyes. Its body was completely black, and it was standing about 100 meters away. The moment I turned to look at it, the dog stopped still. But the terrifying thing was not over. Those glowing red eyes increased from 1 pair to 2 pairs, and then to 3 pairs, until there were 7 pairs of red glowing eyes. I got off the bicycle and in the darkness searched for a stone. I threw it out with all of my strength, not really hoping to hit or injure anything, and it seemed to work. All 7 pairs of red eyes scattered and disappeared into different directions. I got back on the bicycle again and started riding away, but this time, the footsteps I had heard earlier suddenly rushed toward me before I could prepare myself. Within only a few seconds, the owner of that strange sound attacked me immediately. My bicycle fell and my belongings scattered all throughout the road, and the dogs let out one loud howl. As soon as I regained my senses, I hurried to collect things that had scattered across the ground and put them back into the cloth bag. But before I could gather everything, I saw those 7 dogs from earlier. Their bodies were not normal. Some had no legs. Some had short, stubby faces. Some had wounds all over their bodies. But the thing that almost shocked me the most was, at that moment, every single dog was huge. Looking carefully, their size was almost the same size as a large cow, and I immediately ran from that spot. At this time, it seemed like things only became worse. The large mountain I had seen at the end of the road had disappeared, leaving only darkness that seemed to have no end. Out of fear, I ran toward the darkness without thinking about my life. Eventually, I began to grow exhausted. Then, luck seemed to be on my side. I saw the light of a lantern shining from a hut. I hurried toward it to ask for help, and when I got closer, I saw about 5 villagers sitting in a circle, drinking alcohol with a raised platform under the light. When the villagers saw me running toward them in a panic, they all laughed loudly and happily. Because I thought I had definitely survived, I laughed along with them too. But before I could say anything, the villager, sitting farthest inside, whose skin was completely black and whose hair was white all over his head, stretched his arm out long through the middle of the drinking circle and reached straight toward my cloth bag. His face was twisted and distorted, and his eyes bulged out of their sockets. The other villagers laughed as well before sticking out their tongues, stretching them out so long that they reached the floor. I completely lost my senses and stumbled backward away from that place immediately. Then I tried to run again. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a motorcycle speeding up from behind me. It followed me and stopped in front of me. The person I saw was a teenage boy who, judging from his appearance, did not seem to be more than 20 years old. "Hey, brother, you're not from around here, are you?" His dry, hoarse voice made me startle. The moment he finished speaking, the head of that teenage boy slowly turned backward. That would not have been strange if his body had turned with it, but what I saw then was impossible. His head and body were facing in different directions. His body faced forward, but his head had turned back behind him. "Brother, I'm hungry. I'm very hungry." As soon as his voice ended, the motorcycle sped away quickly before crashing and sliding across the ground, sending sparks in a long trail. The body of the teenage boy flew into a rubber tree beside the road with full force. His head twisted until it was almost torn away from his body before he vanished into the darkness. By then, everything was becoming worse and worse. I thought I might not make it out of that place alive, and no matter where I looked, I could not see any road that would lead me out of it. If I continued forward, it was pitch black. If I went back, I did not know what else I would encounter. I forced myself to keep walking forward while trying to stay conscious, cursing as I went. If anyone or anything came to bother me again, I wished that it would never be reborn. I wished for it to become a demon, a wandering spirit trapped here forever. After I gritted my teeth and continued walking through the darkness for a while longer, I heard something that sounded like human footsteps following behind me. But at this time, I decided that I would not turn around to look again. I would close my eyes and keep walking. Any evil spirit that tried to harm me, I cursed it to remain trapped here for all of eternity. As I kept walking, the footsteps behind me increased more and more, from one pair to who knew how many dozens or hundreds of pairs. I did not know how much time had passed or how far I had walked when suddenly I felt the air around me become warmer. It also seemed as if there was a light. I forced myself to open my eyes, and what I saw was a wandering monk sitting under his umbrella tent in the middle of the road. Candlelight surrounded him, and there was a tray with sacred thread placed there. He was facing towards me. Come hide behind me," the monk said. I admit that, at that moment, I still hesitated over whether or not I should believe in him. But since I had no other choice at all, I stepped back over the candlelight and went to hide behind the monk. When I opened my eyes and looked back, I saw hundreds of black shadows standing piled behind one another. Some were shaped like humans. Some were shaped like strange animals that I could not identify. Some were dogs, some were cows and buffaloes, and others looked like they were birds. They filled the area until it seemed dark everywhere. The monk was holding some kind of knife and asked for the cloth bag I was carrying. When he received the bag, he took something out. What I saw was the bag of pork blood that I had bought to make noodles. Then the monk chanted something before asking for the knife I was holding. He used it to cut open the mouth of the bag and immediately threw it toward the group of black shadows. What I saw was something beyond description. Hundreds of spirits swarmed and ate the pork blood that had splattered all over the ground, as if they had been starving for a very, very long time. At that moment, the monk told me to run to the large tree. After passing the tree, I would find a small wooden bridge. I had to hurry and cross it immediately, and was not allowed to turn back until I crossed. I bowed down to the monk and quickly ran exactly as he told me. Behind me, the black shadows were still swarming and eating the blood excitedly. The moment I crossed the wooden bridge, I heard the voice of an old woman call out, "Boy, what are you doing there?" Instantly, everything around me changed. The sun was beginning to rise. Around me were rubber trees and tall grass that rose above my head, so thick that I could not continue walking. The villagers who saw me came to help. They had to bring knives to cut through the grass and carry me out from that place. When I looked back, there was no path and no road at all. There was only tall grass, rubber trees, and a very dense forest. All around my body were cuts from the grass. After that incident, at dawn, my boss and coworkers who had been waiting for me since that evening helped take me to the temple. When we arrived, we met an old monk. He lit up many incense sticks, though I cannot remember how many, and he handed them to me. He told me to go pay respects to the great teacher monk. The moment I went in, what I saw was a picture of the monk I had seen the night before, along with his ashes, bones, incense, and candles that had been set up for worship. It was considered my good fortune that he had mercy on me and came to help me in time. The old monk at that temple told me that the teacher monk was the former abbot of the temple, and he had passed away a long time ago. As for the things I encountered, they were likely the spirits of wandering ghosts and demons that had come to ask for merit, or perhaps they had smelled the raw blood that I was carrying. People in that area said that, in the past, that place had once been a cemetery. Because of that, when they built the road, they had to curve it around in a U-shape. Nowadays, every temple has a crematorium, so no one goes into the old cemetery anymore. As time passed, trees and grass grew over it, and eventually it turned into a forest. Those spirits there were probably hungry. After that, I immediately went back home and never returned to work at that place again. As for the bicycle, I later learned from my friend that the workers had found it deep inside the dense forest, near the front of the market, many dozens of meters in. Even now, no one dares to take it out. Pretty interesting story. I'm pretty impressed. Thing is, why would the boss make a young teenage guy go and do this whole mission, right? And then purposely tell him, whatever you do, don't stray off the path. When, he could have given this duty to one of the older workers or someone that has more experience and knows the area better. So that way this incident wouldn't happen. Doesn't make any sense to me, but pretty interesting story. I am a man in my late 30s, and I have several businesses of my own. One of them is an event organizing company. One night, while I was driving back after going to inspect an event venue in another province, a place that I had never been to before, I was exhausted from the entire day. After I had driven back about halfway, I began to feel like I could not keep driving anymore. The road I was on was quite deserted and frightening. There were almost no cars passing at all, and I forced myself to keep driving, hoping that I would eventually come across some kind of rest stop or gas station. But the more that I sped up, the more it seemed like I was moving farther and farther from any community area. The silence from the nighttime atmosphere, together with the cool air from the air conditioner, and the exhaustion that had built up throughout the day made me start to nod off at the wheel. My car began to drift back and forth until the wheels on the left side started slipping toward the edge of the road. But at that moment, it was as if fate was still on my side. Suddenly, I heard the sound of a large motorcycle with a loud exhaust coming from behind me. It sped past the front of my car very quickly. In the darkness, what I saw looked like a female university student riding a big bike past me before disappearing into the dark. That was enough to make me let out a breath of relief. I felt grateful because it had woken me up and kept me from having an accident that could have taken my life. After I became more alert and continued driving for a little while, I noticed lights several kilometers ahead. But the light I saw did not look like they belonged to a gas station or a rest area. They looked more like a checkpoint. When I drove closer, I realized that they were the lights of rescue vehicles helping people at an accident site. What I saw was a trailer truck that had almost finished making a U-turn. At the rear of the trailer, a large motorcycle and one rescue vehicle had crashed and become crushed together. Nearby was the body of the person who had died, lying on the ground with a white cloth covering it. Because of the accident, the road was only open for one lane. I slowly drove past, following the rescue workers' directions. But as I was about to pass the accident scene, one of the rescue workers waved my car down. He seemed to be asking for some kind of help. Since that area did not seem dangerous and there were many rescue workers around, I stopped the car and rolled down the window. When I asked what was going on, I understood that the rescue team wanted me to help take one girl somewhere. When I looked carefully, I saw a female university student. She had clean white skin and a pretty face, and she looked like she came from a well-off family. But the strange thing was that her clothes were extremely dirty and messy. I did not refuse and did not ask too many questions. Since I was already driving anyways, I thought it would be good to have someone travel with me. Because the front passenger seat was full of equipment that I used for work, I told the girl to sit in the back seat. But something strange happened when she got into the car. I felt the car sink heavily, as if something with a great amount of weight had climbed inside. A single young woman should have not have weighed that much, but before she closed the door, a rotten stench so foul it made me want to vomit drifted into my car. I had to quickly roll down the windows. After I drove away for a short while, the atmosphere inside the car became increasingly suffocating. I tried making conversation with her, but she only answered briefly, one question at a time. She kept sitting with her head lowered, muttering to herself, "I want to go home. I want to go home. Why can't I go home already?" I began to feel that something was strange. Then, out of nowhere, the girl asked, "Brother, where did my boyfriend's bike go?" The question came suddenly, with no beginning or explanation, and it made me feel uneasy. When I looked back through the rearview mirror, the sight I saw nearly shocked me to death. The university student lifted her face, and blood was flowing in a long stream from her neck. Then she collapsed and her head broke off and fell onto the back seat. I slammed on the brakes so hard that the tires dragged along the road, then turned around to look. But there was nothing strange there. The girl was still sitting quietly, her face pale. I thought I must have been too tired and had seen a hallucination. I apologized to the girl and continued driving. When we were almost at the town, the girl told me to turn into an alley behind the temple. She said that if we went in only a little farther, we would reach her house. The moment I turned into the alley, the car began acting strangely, as if someone outside was shaking it. The girl then said, "Brother, why are there so many people outside?" But what I saw out the window was nothing. There was not a single person, only darkness covering everything. As I drove deeper and deeper inside, the road became more narrow until both sides of it were filled with rice fields. I had to slow down more and more when suddenly the girl spoke again. "Brother, I don't know who they are, but so many people are following us." That frightened me badly. Even when I looked into the rearview mirror, there was not a single person following us. But what I did see was that blood kept seeping from the girl's neck. In the end, I had to fold the rearview mirror down so I would not see it anymore. Eventually, I began to see lights again. They were blue, green, and red neon lights decorated alongside the road for about 1 kilometer before reaching the house. The house looked like it belonged to a wealthy family. As soon as the university student saw it, she said, "Brother, this is my house. What kind of event is my family holding?" After she finished speaking, before I could even turn around to look, in the blink of an eye, she was already out of the car. I did not even hear the car door open or close at all. It was already very late. Even though there was an event going on and the house was decorated with lights all over, there were no guests or attendees left. From the sounds I could hear, there may have been only a gambling circle inside. Suddenly, all the decorative lights shining throughout the alley went out all at once. Not a single one remained. Even my car's headlight went out as well. For about 30 seconds, I was trapped in complete darkness in an unfamiliar place surrounded by rice fields. Then I heard screams and chaotic shouting coming from inside the house, as if some kind of commotion had broken out. After that, I heard about 3 or 4 people running out from inside the house. They started motorcycles and immediately rode away. Then the lights came back on again. As I was about to reverse the car and leave, I turned around to look behind me and saw a necklace lying on the back seat. I guess it was the girl's necklace and that it had fallen there. When I picked it up and looked at it, I immediately knew that it had to be expensive, so I decided to get out of the car and walk over to ring the doorbell at that house. After the sound of the bell ended, an older-looking woman poked her face out from a second-floor window. Then she came downstairs to meet me. The moment the woman saw me, she immediately began crying. "Did you bring my daughter home, son? Thank you so much." She took my arm and pulled me inside to sit and rest and drink some water. Confused, I followed the mother into the house and sat down at a marble table while drinking the water that she had prepared for me. After things calmed down, I handed the necklace the girl had left behind back to her mother. The moment her mother received the necklace, tears flowed again. She held the necklace tightly against herself before inviting me upstairs to the second floor. When we reached the upper floor, before we entered the hall, the girl's mother held my wrist tightly and said, "Don't be afraid, son." The moment I walked inside, the smell of incense and candles filled the air. What I saw was a large coffin, a refrigerated coffin, set up in the middle of the house. Then I slowly turned to look at the photograph in front of the coffin. It was a picture of the girl that I had just picked up. My knees went weak and I almost collapsed. The mother and the relatives had come to help support me. After I managed to regain my senses and paid my respects to the body, the girl's relatives and mother came to sit together and talk with me. She told me that the girl had died 7 days earlier. That night was the 7th night of the funeral, and that the body was going to be cremated the next day. The cause of her death was that she had been returning home from the university. She had borrowed her boyfriend's big bike to ride home, but then she lost contact. Her mother later received a phone call from the police saying that the girl had been in an accident. She had crashed into a trailer truck that was making a U-turn. It was believed that she had been riding fast and had not seen it. Then, a rescue vehicle that had happened to be following behind struck her again, causing her head to be severed. In that accident, besides the girl, several workers died as well. Throughout the funeral, every night when her mother slept, she dreamt that the girl was trapped at that spot and could not find her way home. Even after inviting a monk to perform a ritual, it still did not work. But just a moment earlier, her mother had suddenly heard the girl's voice calling. The girl said, "I'm home now. Someone brought me back. I missed you so much, Mother." The girl did not know what had happened to her. Everyone who had been sitting there heard the voice too, and they all scattered in different directions, leaving only close relatives behind. Her mother believed that the girl probably still did not realize that she was already dead. As for the necklace, it was the necklace that the girl's father had given to her before he passed away many years earlier. The girl loved and cherished it very much. It must have been her intention to make it come with my car so that the necklace could return to her mother. After learning the full truth, I decided to stay there overnight and remain for the cremation the next day. After the funeral rites were completed, while I was driving back, I was still wondering about everything that had happened. So I turned the car around and went back along the same road to the place where I had picked up the girl. When I arrived, there were no traces of the accident left. It was probably true that the accident had happened several days earlier. What I had seen must have been the girl's final consciousness, still trying to return home to her mother. It must have connected with my own weakened mind at the time when I was also about to have an accident. That caused me to see certain images, and in the end, I considered myself lucky because that same thing had helped saved my life as well. Guys, this just gave me an idea. Okay, if there are any of you guys out there that do Uber and stuff like that, pick up people, I know a lot of people have been doing that as a side hustle these days because we can't afford to buy a house. Anyways, some of y'all better be careful because you might have to pick up a ghost hitchhiker like this. But if you're lucky, you get like a nice one like this person, this individual that passed away, and they won't freak you out. It is a little freaky, so just don't look into your back mirror and, hopefully they leave you a good tip on Uber.